because you can have a certain amount of time with Church of Christ people sometimes. But I had two people that I was able to talk with that actually shared a similar background that I have. And they were just so encouraging to keep walking, to keep going. Even though the people around you maybe don't understand, or maybe they think you're just crazy what you're doing. And so I was really encouraged by those people. I really felt like God was, even in those times where you feel like, okay, this is just going to be, I mean, it was my grandmother's funeral, which is great. I was happy for her and happy for that. But it was that part of it I wasn't excited about. But even through those things, that God kind of sends you little gifts to make it worthwhile and special. And in the times where you feel like you're just not going to get a whole lot out of something necessarily, sometimes that's when you get a whole lot. And it was kind of one of those days. I talked to a pastor that is here. He's got a very, very similar background to ours. And it was just so encouraging, the things that he said, the things that he has gone through with having a church. It's just so amazing how close it was to what we're going through. And he just spoke so much encouragement. And he said, man, I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly what you're going through. And he said, just keep walking. He said, that's what people will look at as proof of whether or not it's real. He said, when you stand the test of time, that's when people know something is real. And I mean, we had gone over that before in here about with what Paul said in 2 Corinthians, but I wanted to share that with you. But I was thinking, as we were talking to some people today, we're talking about the gospel and how important that is, and just how much we have to continue to walk in that. And that's where our power comes from, and that's where that's what gives us motivation, and we just need to live in that. And I've had to preach to myself the gospel, especially a lot lately. Just reminding myself over and over and over what Jesus has done for me, and that really will help during times where it's not easy. But you know what I realized? We've just discovered, like especially last week, how important the gospel is. And the climax of the gospel is the crucifixion of Jesus. But most of us, besides Revelation, the part where Jesus was arrested and crucified is probably what we read the least. You ever imagine that? Like the part that's supposed to be the most important for us, the part that's like the climax of history that we're supposed to walk in and live in and get our power from, that part is actually the part that we read the least in the Bible. I mean, I kind of had to admit that for myself. Usually I'm like, turning to the letters or 1 John, Peter, what did Paul say, or what was Jesus' ministry like, instead of really walking closely with the details of what happened with the climax of the gospel, which is the cross, and Jesus taking our place. And what I really want, what I want for my life, and this is what I have a hope for with you too, is that we can really start to embrace and live in what happened, so that it just becomes so real to us. Because I feel like biblically, that's where we get our power. That's where transformation happens. The problems that we have that need to be fixed, we have to go to the gospel. We have to go to Jesus. And so I kind of wanted I thought we needed to spend some time in those places. Maybe in the next few weeks we'll spend some time there. But one perspective that I found really interesting was John's, in John 18. And if you want to turn there, you can. We don't have it up on the screen. But this is got so much meat to it. It is so special. And because of what we know now about God's sovereignty and Jesus' power and the authority, you're probably going to see something here that you haven't seen before. And that's what's going to make this passage so beautiful for you. Jesus has just got through praying to God. He just said this huge long prayer. He's prayed for the disciples. He's prayed that he would glorify God's name, and he's prayed that we would love each other, all this kind of stuff. And then we get to John chapter 18. And let's read what John, the author, is setting up for us about Jesus. It says, when Jesus had spoken these words after his prayer, he went out with the disciples across the brook Kidron, where there was a garden. What garden is that?
Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah, the Garden of Gethsemane. It says, which he and his disciples entered. Now, Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place. Do you hear this? Judas, who had betrayed him, this has already happened as far as he has already told Judas, what you're about to go do it quickly. That has already happened. I think back in John 13. He says, what you're about to do, go do it swiftly, do it quickly. And it says, Judas knew this place too. Now there's a reason why he mentions that here. It says, now Judas who betrayed him also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So this place that Jesus has gone to, it's not some random place that they want to meet together on the way for Jesus to be crucified. This is a place that they went all the time. They actually say that it was probably a gated garden. It probably belonged to a very wealthy person that probably handed Jesus the keys and said, here, you can go there anytime. That's probably what happened because of the location. I mean, this was the Mount of Olives. This was an important place for a wealthy person and a prominent person. It probably wasn't just left open. But Jesus had access to there, and he went there all the time with his disciples. Now, I want you to think about something. Jesus is an outlaw. And he's going somewhere that he's been a whole lot, that people kind of know he goes there. And Judas knows that he goes there a lot. And that's where he's going. What is odd about the fact that Jesus was an outlaw? People were out to get him. And he's going to a place that is completely familiar, that he's gone before. Judas has been there with him, the guy that's actually going to be coming after him, and Jesus knows this. And he's going
towards everything that's about to happen instead of away from him.
How did Osama bin Laden keep from getting caught all those years?
Being where people didn't expect him to.
Yeah. I mean, like his number one rule was you don't stay in the same place again. And I mean, that's just common sense, isn't it? If you're on the run from the law, you're going to move places and you're not going to be predictable. Because if you are, you're going to get caught. And what is so neat about this passage is he's going to the place that he knows, that Judas knows, that he's often at. So just as Robert said, this isn't a thing that happened to Jesus. Jesus here is not the victim. I want you to really let this sink into your minds. Because a lot of people, they approach this situation with Jesus and they're like, oh, poor Jesus, they just got him and they took him and he didn't expect it. And that's just not at all what happened. And as we read through this story, you're going to see that Jesus was in control of this entire situation. And it's going to hit you more and more as we read just a few verses here. He's going to the place where he knows that Judas is going to go first when he brings the people to arrest Jesus. He's meeting it head on. He's got it all planned out. He knows exactly how this is going to go. And that's exactly what is said even in this passage. So that's the setup. They're in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's there because he knows Judas is going to come looking for him there. And listen to what he says after that. He says, so Judas, having procured a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Okay, two things about this. First of all, This wasn't just like 20 people that they got together. The term that's used here, it points to the fact that this would have been many, many people, like several hundred people that were like the Roman soldiers. And adding the people that were from the temple police that were coming too, we're looking at around 1,000 people gathered to arrest Jesus. I thought it would just be it was just a few people, but no, it references like 1,000 people to arrest one man. That's amazing to me. I think there's a little bit of respect there. You know what I mean? Like, we need to arrest one man. Can you imagine the police force sending, let's send 1,000. I mean, they knew what this person was capable of. But you know what's also neat about this is they had opportunities when Jesus was in the temple and whenever he was in Jerusalem, they had plenty of chances to arrest Jesus. Ample opportunities to arrest Jesus right there. But you know what it says? It says that they were afraid of the people. They people liked Jesus. Some people hated him, but a lot of people really liked him. A lot of people were really on his team. And they knew he'd probably get in a lot of trouble. So Jesus went out to the Garden of Gethsemane because that's the only place where they felt confident to arrest him. He knew that. He knew that this was not going to happen unless I go way out here, out of town, to this place that's away from everybody else. And they can come with their legion of men, their 1,000 people, to come and get me. That's the only place they're going to feel comfortable enough to arrest me. And so Jesus was all for this happening. And he planned it out and worked it out so that it would happen exactly this way. And I'm really baffled at that. And just how Jesus was along with the game plan, so much so that he knew exactly what he needed to do to get arrested. Not that he just, he got arrested and it's just a matter of time, before it's going to happen. No, he set it up so that he would get arrested. He was setting it up that way. Now listen to what he says after this. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him. That just backs up what we're already saying. He knew all of this would happen. He knew exactly how it would happen. He's setting it up this way. And all that's going to happen after this, guess what? Jesus is setting it up that way. And you're going to see that. Listen to what he says. Jesus, knowing all that would happen, he's there at the garden with his disciples, and Jesus walks forward. So you've got Jesus in front of everybody, all the disciples, and they're behind him. And then in front of Jesus is this band of soldiers and temple police. That's what this would look like. Jesus steps forward, the disciples are behind him, and the police force is in front of him. And this is what Jesus asked them. He comes in front of them and says, who you're after? Who do you want? Pay attention because he's going to say this again. Who do you want? And this is what they say. We want Jesus of Nazareth. And this is a weird way to name Jesus. It is true to say Jesus of Nazareth, but they didn't say, we want Jesus Christ. They didn't want to associate him that way. So they said, we want Jesus of Nazareth. It says, Jesus said to them, I am he. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. And we also know that Judas betrayed them with a kiss, but that's not recorded in here because that's not his point in this passage. But it says Judas was with him, and when he said, I am he, this is the same terminology that God uses whenever he says, I am. He says, I am he. They drew back and fell to the ground. I want you to imagine Jesus is in the middle, the disciples are behind him, and the people that are coming to arrest Jesus fall on their face when Jesus says, I am he. And all of them. This was not just because somebody tripped and they had a domino effect. All of them fell on the ground. And that's exactly what Jesus made them do. They fell on the ground. Now they're coming to arrest Jesus, and they're on their face. And then listen to what Jesus does again. He says, "Who do you seek?" He's asking the question again. Who are you after? They just fell on the ground. They fell on their face. Now who are you after? And then they say again, "Jesus of Nazareth." And Jesus answered this way, "I told you that I am He. So if you seek me, let these men go." This is what Jesus is setting up here. I am He, so you let these men go. He asked them the question twice. Who are you looking for? Who are you looking for? It's me. I'm who you're looking for. You say you're looking for Jesus? You say you're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. That's me. You're looking for Jesus? Now that's me. That's me. He's putting a lot of emphasis on you said you're looking for me, and this is me. The disciples are behind you. You're looking for me, I'm here. So you better let these men go. You better let these men go. You came here for me, that's what you're telling me. So you let them go. You see, Jesus is standing out in front of them. You better let them go. You're here for me. You're not here for them. You better let them go. And listen to what he says. This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. Of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one. I hope some of you in here recognize that verse. Do you? We have talked about it before. You remember where Jesus said that? Does it ring a bell? Does the verse ring a bell at all where Jesus said that?
It does, but I can't think where it was.
So where he talks about being the good shepherd.
He may have mentioned that there. He actually does mention that there, I think. In his prayer, earlier in the chapter, Jesus is praying to God, and he says, I haven't lost one. I haven't lost even one of those that you gave me. Not even one. And this happened to fulfill, to go in line with what happened. Do you see what Jesus is concerned with? Because the people that came to arrest Jesus, I am positive what they would have loved to do is just arrest all of them. Let's just nip this in the bud, and let's just round them all up, and we'll deal with all of them. This Jesus guy's a problem, but you know what? If we don't get rid of them too, this could be a problem. Jesus is saying this. He's saying you got to let these people go because he doesn't want any of them to be lost. Do you hear what he's saying? You're going to let these people go, and he said, and the Bible's telling us he's saying that so that they won't be lost. They won't be lost. Because if they had have arrested the disciples at this point in their life, they would not have been able to handle it. I mean, look at what Peter did when they just asked him if he followed Jesus. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle being arrested. It would have destroyed them. And so Jesus is out there standing in front of his disciples, and he's not allowing them to go through more than they can handle. But isn't that what God already promises us? You will not be tempted beyond what you can bear. 1 Corinthians 10, you remember? You will not be tempted beyond what you can bear. And so Jesus was setting up this whole little... I mean, he's got the cross on his mind, obviously. He's about to be crucified, and that's a big enough deal. But in the middle of this turmoil, and right after he's prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane and drops of blood came out of his head, he is concerned about his disciples. It's not that Jesus gets too busy, concerned about the cross, that he's not taking care of the disciples. He's standing out there in front of them, and he's saying, now you're going to let these men go because you're after me. And you know what? They never would have really taken what Jesus was saying if he hadn't made them fall down on their face. I think they knew that Jesus was not going to let them take the disciples. I think they understood Jesus' point real clear because he repeated himself. Now, you're after me, you're not after them, right? So you need to let them go. I want you to see that that is the kind of care that we have with Jesus. That he is not going to let us go and have more than what we can handle. And then look at what Peter does. Look what Peter does. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So Peter steps in front of Jesus at this little situation, gets out his sword, and says, it's time to fight. It's time to just go to town on some people. And Jesus says, Peter, put your sword up. You know why he says that? I've got this. You don't have to get out your sword. You don't have to do that. I've got this. Now this whole scenario should be familiar to you. Because situations come up in your life and we feel like we have to take initiative and take control and do something, or something bad's going to happen. And there may be situations where we are called to act. But the whole point of this story is that Jesus says, I've got this. I've got this. Peter, put your sword back up. You know, it's the same thing that Moses said to the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. He said, but you don't have to fight. You just have to stand here and the Lord will win this battle. And I'm just so amazed at how when Jesus was probably at the most stressful point in his life, was taking care of the disciples, and was not allowing them to go in to a situation beyond what they could handle. He's protecting them. And I think that we need to feel that kind of protection from Jesus. Do you realize that there's situations in your life that Jesus has protected you from? Situations that would destroy you. There are situations that if Jesus just withdrew his hand, they would destroy you. That would be the end of you. The disciples had been arrested, that would have been the end of them. They probably would have been crucified right along with Jesus. But Jesus was not going to let that happen. You were talking about a protector. I don't know of one greater than Jesus. I don't know of one greater than Jesus. And this is what Jesus says to Peter. He says, shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given to me? So this whole situation isn't this scenario that's come to Jesus because of people. He says this to Peter, shall I not drink the cup that the Father has brought to me? This whole situation, as we've said before, it isn't happening because a group of people are mad at Jesus. That's true. But what God was doing was handing the cup of wrath that we deserved. He said, here, Jesus, drink it. And this is the starting point in which Jesus takes the wrath and the judgment and the punishment that we deserve, and he starts to tilt the glass up. And he's going to drink it. He's going to drink it all. It's so beautiful how Jesus is so obedient and willing and so protective, all in the same story, all in the same situation. Jesus was setting this up. He set up this whole thing so that he could take our place. And I hope that we can see that as we walk through what happened in the crucifixion. That, Jesus could have crushed these people. He, as the song says, he could have called 10,000 angels. Well, he didn't even need that. I mean, he just made them fall on their face. They just fell on their face just because he said, I am he. And they just fell to the ground. And then they were dumb enough to still arrest him. But that shows you just how much he was in control of the whole situation. It was providence at work. It was happening exactly the way, in this passage as it says, exactly the way that Jesus knew that it was going to happen. And I think about myself and where I'm at in relation to Jesus. Many times we want to get out in front of Jesus and deal with our battles and fight them out and sort it out and work it out. But the place we need to be is behind him. I love how much of a leader Jesus was. He's not the person that's in the back saying, yeah, y'all get him up there. He's in the front. He is in the front. And that's the picture that we should get of Jesus, that he goes before us. He's the protector that goes before us. He's gone before us through death, and he's at the right hand of God. The perfect leader, the perfect protector, the perfect shepherd. I'm not going to lose one. Jesus can say that statement. I'm not going to lose one. Not even one of my sheep. Now that's something to rest in. I'm not going to lose any of my sheep. And isn't this story just the perfect proof of that? Jesus didn't even let them arrest him. I'm not even going to let you arrest the disciples. You came here for me, and you get to have me. What John is wanting to tell us here, Jesus was not the victim. He is the victor of this whole passage. Because he's the one behind all of it. He's the one setting it up. And at the same time, he's having it happen only the way that he wants it to happen. Because he's still concerned about his disciples. What a beautiful passage. What a beautiful beginning to the gospel. And how Jesus took our place. You know what? Really, they should have been coming to arrest us. That's what we deserve. We deserve to be completely humiliated, on the run, and arrested and put on trial for what happened to us. But no, Jesus steps out in front of us and says, no, you can take me, but you're not going to touch them. Now that's substitution. And it's happening right here at the very beginning. Jesus is already substituting himself for what the disciples really deserved as far as their sin and the things that, having the judgment of God on them. But at the beginning, he's stepping out in front of them and saying, no, you can take me, but you're not taking them. I think that's what we need to understand of how Jesus is and what he is doing for us right now. Is he stepping out in front of us and saying, now you can take me. I'll take that on. But you're not going to touch them. I'm not going to give you that authority. Because I'm not going to lose any of mine. I just wanted you to see the beauty of this passage, his power, his love, his determination, his obedience. It's such a beautiful place to open up the gospel. We're going to walk more in this. And I want to just soak it in and just understand exactly what Jesus was going through, because I want to accept the gospel as much as I possibly can. I want that to be, I just want to marinate my life in that. Because the more I think that I read about this stuff, the more it's going to be real to me, and the more I can rest in it, the more I can have power in it, the more I can just live in that. And the more I'll be the person that I need to be by just resting in what he's done. Isn't it a wonderful position to put yourself behind Jesus? Such a comforting, safe place to be. Even though at the time it doesn't seem like it, there's such a safe place to be. And we can be sure that Jesus wins all of his battles, even yours. Do you hear me? Jesus wins all of his battles, even yours. And isn't it proof of what just happened? Jesus told his disciples there's going to be trouble in this world. You're going to go through a lot of trouble, but I've overcome the world. I've won. So there's so much comfort and joy from realizing who goes before us. And this passage is actually a parallel to David and Ahithophel. He betrayed David. And this passage is a parallel to that. I just wanted you to know that because we've been talking about what does the Old Testament mean? Well, this happened to David. I mean, just exactly. He went up to the Mount of Olives just like what we're describing. And his son was after him to kill him. And Ahithophel, this whole thing happened because Ahithophel betrayed him, just as Judas betrayed Jesus. And he's praying in the garden about, what do I do? What do I do? And the difference is David prays out to God, gets comfort and security, and doesn't die. But Jesus prays out to God, gets comfort and security, but then goes through it and actually has his life taken from him. That's the type that we get in the Old Testament. I hope you can picture yourself in this life as disciples of Jesus, as us standing behind Jesus, that he is in between us and our enemies. It's not just you and your enemies, that there's somebody standing in between there and determining what he is and is not going to allow to happen. And tweaking and altering and setting it up just the way he wants it to happen. Because one way or another, he's going to win. He's going to come out the victor. And he's going to make sure that you come out on the other side too. What a magnificent, awesome Savior that we have. That's all I've got.
One thing, I went to Luke when they were talking
Yeah.
about that, and it said Jesus healed that man whose ear was cut off.
Yeah.
And it's like, not only did he make him fall, he even healed this man that was about to take him.
Yeah.
And it's
Two
like,
miracles.
If that didn't show them that he wasn't against them, he was actually for them. They were
Yeah.
just against him.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually not allowing them to break out into a fight.
Yeah.
You know? And it's two miracles that happen there. You know, and you wouldn't really notice it if you just read over it, but there's two miracles that happen there where Jesus had to act for it to happen, just like he said, for it to happen that exact way. I mean, it had to happen that way. Jesus did not want us to turn into some kind of battle and war because he was wanting to surrender himself over, but he wanted this. I mean, it's awesome to think about the fact that Jesus was going to surrender himself over, but at the same time, not let them arrest somebody else. I mean, who else has ever been in that kind of position where they can, you know, make the terms of which they're going to turn themselves in like that? Well, I'll turn myself in, but the rest of the criminals, you got to let them go. I mean, that has never happened. And there's 1,000 men there that could have easily done it, but Jesus had it happen exactly the way it needed to happen. The disciples were protected. He's drinking the cup of God's wrath, and it's all about to begin with Jesus taking our place and really the climax of the gospel. Glad you said that, Keith, because I had actually forgotten about that. It's a beautiful passage. I hope to read more about this climax and what Jesus actually went through. It's hard. You know, we don't typically watch the Passion over and over, but sometimes I think it'd be really good for us to let ourselves go there more often than we do, so that this can become more real than it actually is, so we can really trust in it. And you know, we're told to hold on to that word of what happened, and that's what I want for my life. So I thought it would be neat for us to take a story like that. Maybe we'll take more.
Hey, does everybody know that Roma Downey, Roma Downey and her husband, the ones that did that Bible miniseries, have got a movie that's hitting the theater in just about a week, Son of God.
Yeah.
Why don't we get together?
I want to say something about that movie. I'm glad. I read an article about, she was talking about the Bible series. And you know, if you didn't watch it, the devil was all through the movie, and he looked a lot like Obama. He really did.
You've heard that before, right?
Yeah,
He really did favor Obama. Well, she said that just really upset her because the devil got more media and more attention than Christ did.
Yeah.
So she said in this movie, the devil is not even in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
No, nowhere in the movie
Mhm.
is the devil in there.
Yeah.
Because she said she wanted it all to be about Christ.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because she said it was the media just went on and on and on and on and on about him being Obama,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad she did that, but it's like they're going to take something, because they don't want the emphasis to be on Jesus.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they're doing that. I thought to myself, it's about time that somebody. I mean, we had The Passion. That was the first big movie that, it was done with a lot of energy, and it was a well done movie, and the special effects and stuff were there. And I thought, it's about time. I mean, these stories are just wonderful stories, and I'm so glad that people are finally taking them and making real movies out of them, because they're the greatest stories of ever. But it's happening. I mean, there's old ones that are they're not that good, but I'm glad to see some of those come out. So we do need to go watch it. It'd be awesome. Is it kind of like The Passion?
no, it's kind of like that Bible series they had on
Yeah.
TV.
The story or whatever.
But it's more about it's more about Jesus.
Just Jesus.
Yeah, just Jesus.
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, we need to. I'd love to go see it.